Alex stepped off the transport shuttle, his boots hitting the dusty surface of the alien planet. The mission was simple: assist in the peace talks between two rival alien factions. But as soon as he arrived, he realized things were far from simple. The air was thick with tension, and the quiet buzz of alien technology filled the space around him. The planet's landscape was unlike anything he had ever seen. Mountains that glowed with strange energy, skies streaked with purple and orange, and the sound of something strange echoing in the distance. Alex's team had been briefed about the mission, but no one had prepared him for the situation he was about to walk into. As they made their way through the alien city, he couldn't help but feel like he was being watched. Every alien they passed seemed to be studying him, their eyes full of curiosity, but also something else, something darker. Then they reached the central meeting hall, where the leaders of the two factions were waiting. But as Alex stepped inside, his attention was immediately drawn to the strange group standing in the corner. It wasn't the leaders or their guards. It was three alien girls. At first glance, they looked identical, standing side by side in perfect harmony. But there was something different about them. Each girl had long, flowing hair that shimmered like liquid silver. Their skin was a deep shade of blue, but it was the strange, glowing markings on their bodies that caught Alex's eye. These markings pulsed with a rhythmic glow, almost as if they were alive. Alex instinctively took a step back, trying to process what he was seeing. He had heard rumors during the briefing. Talk of a third alien species recently discovered on this planet, but nothing prepared him for the sight of these girls. One of the girls, the middle one, caught his gaze. Her eyes were a deep violet, glowing softly in the dim light. Her expression was unreadable, but there was an air of mystery surrounding her. As he stared at her, he noticed something strange. Her left arm was not like the others. It wasn't just an ordinary limb. Instead, it was a complex, mechanical structure that seemed to shimmer with a strange energy. It was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. The other two girls had similar features, but it was the one with the mechanical arm that held Alex's attention. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The mechanical limb wasn't just an oddity. It was advanced, far more advanced than anything Alex's people had ever developed. It looked like something from another galaxy. And yet, here it was, attached to an alien girl standing in front of him. The tension in the room grew as the leaders began to speak, but Alex couldn't focus on them. His eyes kept returning to the girl with the glowing limb. Was she some kind of weapon, or perhaps a member of an ancient alien race with abilities beyond his understanding? The more he looked at her, the more questions raced through his mind. One of the alien leaders noticed Alex's intense focus and approached him with a serious expression. "You've noticed her, haven't you?" the leader asked, his voice low. "Her name is Vera. She is different." Alex blinked, still in shock. Different? How? The leader's eyes narrowed. Vera is the third of her kind, a mutation of sorts. But it's not just a physical difference. The extra limb she possesses is something that has only appeared in their species in the last few generations. It's a sign of an ancient prophecy, one that many believe will lead to a great change for our people. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He had been sent here to mediate peace, not to deal with ancient prophecies. Yet here he was, standing in front of a girl with an impossible limb and an even more impossible destiny. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that Vera was no ordinary alien. She was something far more important, and possibly far more dangerous. Before Alex could ask more questions, the girl named Vera stepped forward, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, the world seemed to fade away as they locked eyes. There was a depth to her gaze, as if she knew something Alex didn't. He couldn't explain it, but in that moment, he felt an inexplicable connection with her. As the meeting continued, Alex tried to push his thoughts aside. He was here on a mission, and he couldn't afford to get distracted. But the more he observed Vera, the more he realized that she wasn't just a strange anomaly. She was the key to something much bigger. The girl with the mechanical arm held a power that could change everything. The meeting continued, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the real conflict wasn't between the factions. It was between what they all wanted from Vera. And as the meeting ended and the leaders left the room, Alex found himself standing alone with her, the silence between them heavy with unspoken words. "Why are you here?" Alex asked, his voice quiet. Alex stepped off the transport shuttle, his boots hitting the dusty surface of the alien planet. The mission was simple: assist in the peace talks between two rival alien factions. But as soon as he arrived, he realized things were far from simple. The air was thick with tension, and the quiet buzz of alien technology filled the space around him. The planet's landscape was unlike anything he had ever seen. Mountains that glowed with strange energy, skies streaked with purple and orange, and the sound of something strange echoing in the distance. Alex's team had been briefed about the mission, but no one had prepared him for the situation he was about to walk into. As they made their way through the alien city, he couldn't help but feel like he was being watched. Every alien they passed seemed to be studying him, their eyes full of curiosity, but also something else, something darker. Then they reached the central meeting hall, where the leaders of the two factions were waiting. But as Alex stepped inside, his attention was immediately drawn to the strange group standing in the corner. It wasn't the leaders or their guards. It was three alien girls. At first glance, they looked identical, standing side by side in perfect harmony, but there was something different about them. Each girl had long, flowing hair that shimmered like liquid silver. Their skin was a deep shade of blue, but it was the strange, glowing markings on their bodies that caught Alex's eye. These markings pulsed with a rhythmic glow, almost as if they were alive. Alex instinctively took a step back, trying to process what he was seeing. He had heard rumors during the briefing, talk of a third alien species recently discovered on this planet, but nothing prepared him for the sight of these girls. One of the girls, the middle one, caught his gaze. Her eyes were a deep violet, glowing softly in the dim light. Her expression was unreadable, but there was an air of mystery surrounding her. As he stared at her, he noticed something strange. Her left arm was not like the others. It wasn't just an ordinary limb. Instead, it was a complex, mechanical structure that seemed to shimmer with a strange energy. It was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. The other two girls had similar features, but it was the one with the mechanical arm that held Alex's attention. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The mechanical limb wasn't just an oddity. It was advanced, far more advanced than anything Alex's people had ever developed. It looked like something from another galaxy. And yet, here it was, attached to an alien girl standing in front of him. The tension in the room grew as the leaders began to speak, but Alex couldn't focus on them. His eyes kept returning to the girl with the glowing limb. Was she some kind of weapon? Or perhaps a member of an ancient alien race with abilities beyond his understanding? The more he looked at her, the more questions raced through his mind. One of the alien leaders noticed Alex's intense focus and approached him with a serious expression. "You've noticed her, haven't you?" the leader asked, his voice low. "Her name is Vera. She is different." Alex blinked, still in shock. Different? How? The leader's eyes narrowed. Vera is the third of her kind, a mutation of sorts. But it's not just a physical difference. The extra limb she possesses is something that has only appeared in their species in the last few generations. It's a sign of an ancient prophecy, one that many believe will lead to a great change for our people. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He had been sent here to mediate peace, not to deal with ancient prophecies. Yet here he was, standing in front of a girl with an impossible limb and an even more impossible destiny. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that Vera was no ordinary alien. She was something far more important, and possibly far more dangerous. Before Alex could ask more questions, the girl named Vera stepped forward, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, the world seemed to fade away as they locked eyes. There was a depth to her gaze, as if she knew something Alex didn't. He couldn't explain it, but in that moment, he felt an inexplicable connection with her. As the meeting continued, Alex tried to push his thoughts aside. He was here on a mission, and he couldn't afford to get distracted. But the more he observed Vera, the more he realized that she wasn't just a strange anomaly. She was the key to something much bigger. The girl with the mechanical arm held a power that could change everything. The meeting continued, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the real conflict wasn't between the factions. It was between what they all wanted from Vera. And as the meeting ended and the leaders left the room, Alex found himself standing alone with her, the silence between them heavy with unspoken words. "Why are you here?" Alex asked, his voice quiet. Vera sighed, her gaze shifting back to the mountains in the distance. "I don't know if I can control it. The power in my arm, it's not something I can just turn off. Sometimes it takes over, and I can't stop it. When that happens, I lose control. I hurt people. I hurt the ones I love." Alex could feel the pain in her words, the weight of her guilt. She wasn't just struggling with the power inside her. She was struggling with the fear of losing herself. And that fear made her push everyone away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind rustled through the trees, and the distant sound of alien creatures filled the air. Alex didn't know what to say. He couldn't imagine what Vera was going through, what it would be like to have such power, and to fear it. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady. "You're not alone in this. You don't have to face it on your own." Vera turned to him, her violet eyes searching his face. For the first time, there was a flicker of hope in her gaze. "But you don't understand. You don't know what it's like." Alex stepped forward, his voice firm. "Maybe I don't. But I do know one thing. You're not alone anymore. I'll help you. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." Vera studied him for a long time, as if weighing his words. Then, slowly, she nodded. Maybe you're right." As they stood there, the stars beginning to twinkle overhead, Alex knew that things were never going to be the same. The world he had known had already started to change. And Vera, her powers, her destiny, was at the center of it all. He didn't know where this journey would lead, but one thing was certain: it was going to be dangerous, and it was going to be more than anything he had ever imagined. The secrets of Vera were only just beginning to unravel. The days that followed were filled with more questions than answers. Alex couldn't stop thinking about Vera and her strange, glowing arm. Her words echoed in his mind. How the arm wasn't just a physical feature, but a key to something much bigger. He didn't fully understand it, but there was no denying that she was hiding something. Something that could change everything. The more Alex saw of her, the more he realized that Vera wasn't just another alien. There was a power within her that was far beyond what he had imagined. She had told him that the mechanical arm was linked to an ancient prophecy, but what did it mean? And why did it seem like she was running from it? He was determined to find out. But Vera had become more distant over the past few days. She would often vanish for hours, only to return with the same guarded expression, as if nothing had happened. Alex knew that she was hiding something important, but getting her to open up was becoming harder with each passing day. One evening, after the sun had set and the alien city was bathed in the soft glow of its artificial lights, Alex made up his mind. He needed to see this power for himself. If he was going to help her, he needed to understand what was at stake. He found her in a quiet, secluded part of the city, near a large crystal formation that emitted a faint, pulsing light. Vera was standing there, her eyes closed as if she were deep in thought. Her mechanical arm was glowing brighter than ever before, the strange energy swirling around it in a way that made Alex's skin prickle with unease. "Vera," Alex called softly, stepping forward. Vera opened her eyes slowly, her violet gaze meeting his. There was something in her eyes that made Alex hesitate. She looked almost afraid. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I need to understand," Alex said, his voice firm. "I need to know what's really going on with you. I can't help you if you keep hiding everything from me." Vera looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. "I didn't want you to see this. I didn't want anyone to know." Before Alex could respond, she raised her mechanical arm. The glowing markings on her skin seemed to come alive as her arm began to glow even brighter. The energy pulsed, and Alex felt a sudden surge of power in the air. It was as if the very atmosphere around them was charged with electricity. Then, without warning, a burst of energy shot out from her arm, striking the crystal formation in front of them. The ground beneath their feet trembled as the crystal began to hum with an otherworldly energy. Alex stumbled backward, his heart racing in his chest. He had never felt anything like this before. Vera didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out with her mechanical arm, and Alex couldn't help but notice how graceful it was. It moved with a fluidity that was almost human, despite its artificial appearance. Her fingers brushed his arm lightly, sending a shock of energy through him. The touch was cold, but there was something else, something he couldn't quite place. "I'm here because they need me," Vera said softly, her voice almost like a whisper, "but I'm not sure I can help them." Alex stared at her, trying to make sense of her words. This was no ordinary alien, and her fate, it seemed, was tied to the future of the entire planet. The mystery of Vera was just beginning, and Alex, whether he liked it or not, had just stepped into the heart of it. As the days passed, Alex couldn't stop thinking about Vera. Every time he saw her, there was an unexplainable pull in his chest. Her mechanical arm was more than just a physical difference. It was like a living, breathing part of her, pulsating with strange energy. The more he observed, the more confused he became. What was the true nature of her powers? Why had she been born with this limb, unlike the others of her species? The alien city was a strange place, with towering structures made of materials Alex had never seen before. The streets were bustling with beings of all shapes and sizes, some of whom were watching him with curious eyes. But it wasn't the city or its inhabitants that occupied his thoughts. It was Vera. One evening, after a long day of tense negotiations between the factions, Alex found himself walking alone through the alien streets, his mind heavy with questions. He needed answers. He needed to understand what was really happening with Vera. It was then that he saw her again. She was standing near the edge of the city, looking out over the distant mountains. Her silver hair flowed in the wind, and the strange markings on her skin glowed softly in the dimming light. But it was the mechanical arm that caught his attention once more. He couldn't stop staring at it. It seemed to move on its own, like it had a mind of its own. The more he watched, the more he realized that the arm wasn't just a tool. It was a part of who she was. Without thinking, Alex walked towards her. He couldn't explain why, but something inside him told him that if he wanted answers, he needed to speak to her directly. As he approached, Vera turned, her violet eyes meeting his with a calm, almost knowing expression. "You've been following me," she said, her voice soft but strong. "Why?" Alex hesitated for a moment before answering. "I don't understand what's happening. Why do you have that arm? What is it? I've never seen anything like it before." Vera smiled faintly, but there was sadness in her eyes. "It's not just an arm," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's a key to something much bigger than you or me, and it's something I'm still trying to understand myself." Alex's mind raced. A key to what? Vera looked away, staring out at the horizon. "To an ancient power," she said slowly, "something that has been buried for centuries. It's part of an old prophecy, one that my people believe will lead us to a new era. But the truth is, I don't know if I'm ready for it. I don't know if I can control it." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just a simple peace mission. It was something far more complicated, something far more dangerous. The mysterious arm, the prophecy. Everything was beginning to feel like it was leading up to something big. And Vera, the girl with the mechanical limb, was at the center of it all. He stepped closer to her, trying to understand. But why you? Why were you chosen for this? Why do you have this power? Vera turned to face him, her expression unreadable. I wasn't chosen, she said quietly. It just happened. The limb, the markings, it's all a result of an ancient genetic mutation. My people call it the ascension. It's a process that occurs once every few generations, but it's not always a blessing. Sometimes it's a curse. Alex was stunned. A curse. Vera nodded slowly. The ascension brings with it immense power, but it also brings great responsibility. And not everyone is ready for it. Some of my people believe that I'm the one who will lead them into the next stage of our evolution. Others think I'm a danger, that I'm something unnatural. That's why I'm being hunted. Alex's heart went out to her. He could see the weight of her words, the fear in her eyes. She wasn't just some alien with a strange arm. She was a girl who had been born with something that could change the course of her entire species, and possibly the entire galaxy. I don't understand, Alex said softly. If this power is so important, why are you running from it? Why not embrace it? Vera lowered her arm slowly, her breathing heavy. This is the power I've been trying to control, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is the ascension. It's not just a part of me. It is me. It's everything I am. And I don't know how to stop it. Alex stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. The energy that had erupted from her arm was unlike anything he had ever encountered. It was raw, untamed, and terrifying. But there was something else in it, something beautiful, something almost divine. What is it? What does it mean? Alex asked, his voice thick with awe and fear. Vera turned to face him, her expression filled with sadness. It means that I am the key to something greater than any of us. The power within me is tied to the ancient prophecy. My people believe that I will either bring them salvation or destruction. The ascension is said to be the turning point for our species, but I don't know if I'm ready to bear that burden. I don't know if I can control it. Alex stepped closer, his heart aching for her. He could see the fear in her eyes, the weight of the power she carried. It was clear that she didn't want this responsibility, but it had been thrust upon her nonetheless. You're not alone in this, Alex said softly, his voice full of determination. You don't have to face it alone. I'll help you. Vera shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. You don't understand. I've hurt people. I've lost control before. I can't keep doing this. I'm scared of what I'll become. Alex reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. You're not a weapon. You're not just some tool of destruction. You're a person, Vera. And you don't have to be afraid of what you can't control. Together, we can figure this out. For a long time, they stood in silence, the only sound the faint hum of the crystal and the gentle breeze that blew through the city. Slowly, Vera's shoulders relaxed, and she looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and sorrow in her eyes. I don't know what to do, she whispered. I don't know if I can trust anyone with this power. But maybe I can trust you. Alex nodded, his resolve stronger than ever. You can. I promise you that. The power that Vera carried was more than just a physical strength. It was a force that could reshape the future of her species. But it was also a burden, one that she was struggling to bear. As much as she tried to push everyone away, Alex knew that he couldn't turn his back on her. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but he was ready. Together, they would face whatever came next. And as the night wore on, the glowing energy of Vera's arm began to fade, leaving behind an uneasy calm. But Alex knew that this was only the beginning. The true power of the ascension had just been revealed, and with it, the path ahead had become even more uncertain. They were on the verge of something monumental, something that could change everything. And there was no turning back now. Vera's power was not just a key to the prophecy, it was the key to their future. And they had to unlock its secrets before it was too late. Alex had never imagined that his journey would take him this far. He was a soldier used to fighting battles on distant planets, facing enemies that were ruthless and dangerous. But this was different. Vera's powers, her connection to the ancient prophecy, were unlike anything he had ever encountered. And as the days passed, Alex began to realize that he wasn't just helping her. He was being drawn into something much bigger, a storm that could tear apart everything they knew. The city was tense, buzzing with the news of Vera's power. She had become the center of attention, both revered and feared by those around her. Whispers filled the streets, with many wondering if the prophecy was true, if Vera was the one who would lead her people into a new era or bring about their destruction. But Alex knew one thing for sure. No matter what happened, he wasn't going to let her face it alone. The pressure was beginning to weigh heavily on Vera. Every day, she seemed more distant, more withdrawn. It wasn't just the power inside her. It was the responsibility that came with it. She had always been a part of something bigger, but now that she understood the true nature of her role, the burden seemed unbearable. Alex saw it in her eyes. The fear, the doubt. She was struggling to control the power within her, afraid that one wrong move could destroy everything. One afternoon, Alex found Vera standing on a balcony overlooking the city. The sky was darkening, and a storm was brewing in the distance. The winds were picking up, causing the tall structures of the city to sway gently. Vera stood motionless, her gaze fixed on the horizon, where lightning flashed in the distance, lighting up the sky in brief, jagged bursts. "Vera," Alex called softly, stepping up beside her. She didn't respond at first, as if lost in thought. Then, after a long moment, she turned to face him, her violet eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "It's happening," she said quietly. Alex frowned, not understanding what she meant. "What's happening?" "The storm," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's not just a natural phenomenon. It's part of the prophecy. The ascension is reaching its peak, and the storm is a signal. It's a test." Alex's heart skipped a beat. A test? A test of what? Vera looked at him, her face pale. "A test of my control. If I can't master the power within me, the storm will consume everything. It will destroy the city and anyone who gets in its path." Alex's breath caught in his throat. He had heard rumors of storms like this before, storms that could tear entire cities apart, that could level mountains. But to hear Vera speak of it so calmly, as if she had accepted it, sent a chill down his spine. She wasn't just worried about her own safety, she was worried about everyone else. "I won't let that happen," Alex said, his voice filled with resolve. "You can control it, Vera. I know you can. You've already faced so much. You're stronger than you think." Vera shook her head, tears beginning to well in her eyes. "You don't understand. This power, it's not just mine to control. It's ancient. It's beyond me. There are forces at work that I can't fight. And if I fail..." She didn't finish the sentence, but Alex knew what she was trying to say. If she failed, the destruction wouldn't just be physical. It would be everything. The end of their world. Alex stepped closer to her, placing his hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone in this. I'll be by your side, no matter what happens." For a moment, Vera didn't move. Then, slowly, she nodded, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I don't want to fail. I don't want to destroy everything. But I don't know if I can stop it. I've never felt anything like this before. The storm is coming, Alex, and I don't know if I can hold it back." As they stood there, the storm in the distance began to move closer, the wind growing stronger, the air charged with electricity. The first crack of thunder rumbled in the distance, followed by another, louder, more deafening than the last. It was as if the very sky was warning them. Something was about to happen. "We need to get to the heart of the city," Alex said urgently. "We need to stop this before it's too late." Vera nodded, and together they hurried down from the balcony. The city was already beginning to react to the storm. People were gathering in the streets, panic spreading as the storm clouds grew darker and closer. It wasn't just a physical storm. It was a storm of emotions, of fear and uncertainty, as the entire city braced itself for what was coming. As they ran through the city, the ground beneath their feet began to shake. The storm was getting closer, and the energy in the air was palpable. The buildings around them began to tremble, as if the storm had already started to seep into the very fabric of the city itself. "We don't have much time," Alex said, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to get to the central tower. It's the only place that might be able to help." Vera nodded, but she looked pale, her face drawn with exhaustion. The central tower is where the ascension is said to begin. It's where everything started, and it's where it will all end. They pushed forward, their footsteps quick and urgent. The storm was now directly overhead, the sky crackling with energy. The wind howled through the streets, and debris flew through the air, threatening to knock them off their feet. The storm wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a manifestation of the power Vera was struggling to control. As they neared the central tower, a sudden burst of lightning struck the ground just ahead of them, sending a shockwave through the air. The sky lit up with an unnatural brightness, and the storm seemed to roar with a life of its own. Alex felt the power around them, thick and heavy, like a pressure building up, waiting to explode. "We're almost there," Alex said, his voice strained. "Stay with me, Vera. We can do this." Vera looked at him, her eyes filled with fear, but also with determination. "I don't know what's going to happen, Alex, but I can't do it without you." And in that moment, Alex realized just how much was at stake, not just for them, but for everyone in the city. They were about to face something that could change everything, and all they had was each other. Together, they would have to face the storm and the power within Vera before it was too late. The air around Alex and Vera felt charged with electricity as they reached the central tower. The storm above them was no longer just a distant rumble. It was here, right on top of them. The sky flashed with violent bolts of lightning, the ground beneath their feet shaking with the power of it. The city was on the brink of destruction, and Vera's power was the only thing that could stop it. But would she be able to control it in time? As they entered the tower, the atmosphere shifted. The walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, the same kind of energy that had been swirling inside Vera since the moment she had learned of her true destiny. The doors to the inner chamber were wide open, as if waiting for them to arrive. Alex's heart raced in his chest as he glanced around, knowing that this was the moment where everything would either end in disaster or be saved. Vera hesitated, her eyes flickering to the swirling storm outside the windows. "Alex," she whispered, her voice filled with doubt. "I don't know if I can control it. The power inside me is too strong. It's like it's not even my own anymore." Alex stepped closer, putting a hand on her shoulder. He could feel the warmth of her skin, but there was an underlying tension in her body that made him uneasy. "You've come this far, Vera. You can do this. You have to. The storm, it's connected to you, but it doesn't control you. You control it." Vera took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The prophecy had been clear. Only the one chosen could wield the storm's power and direct it, but it was never certain whether that person could master it. With the fate of the city, and perhaps the entire planet, hanging in the balance, Vera felt an immense weight on her shoulders. "I don't know if I'm strong enough, Alex," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are," Alex replied with certainty. "Look at everything you've faced already. You're not just any person. You're the one who's meant to stop this. I believe in you." Vera nodded slowly, but her eyes still reflected uncertainty. "All right," she whispered, almost to herself. I'll try. The room around them began to shake as the storm intensified. Thunder cracked so loudly that it sounded like the sky itself was splitting in half. The ground trembled under their feet, and the air felt heavy, as if every molecule was charged with raw energy. Alex could feel the pressure building, not just in the atmosphere, but in Vera herself. The storm was reacting to her emotions, to her fear and doubt. It was pulling at her, trying to break her resolve. "We don't have much time," Alex said, his voice sharp with urgency. "The storm is getting worse. If you don't take control now, it's going to consume everything." Vera nodded again, her face pale but determined. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, centering herself. The room around them seemed to quiet for a moment, as if holding its breath. Then, slowly, she raised her hands, her fingers glowing with an ethereal energy. It wasn't just the power of the storm. This was something more. This was her true strength, the strength she had only just begun to understand. As she began to focus, the storm outside responded. The sky flickered with bolts of lightning. But this time, they weren't just random bursts of energy. They were focused, directed. Vera's power was channeling into the storm, but there was something different now. The power didn't feel like it was threatening to consume her. It felt like it was becoming part of her, flowing through her like a river. The wind howled as the storm surged, but Vera stood her ground, her face tight with concentration. She spoke softly, almost to herself, as if she were trying to calm the storm itself. "I am in control. I am the one who directs this power. It is not my master." But as the storm raged around her, Alex could see that it was not enough. The energy was still too wild, too unpredictable. The power of the storm was overwhelming, and Vera was struggling to maintain control. The wind whipped through the tower, shaking the very foundation, and the sky above crackled with the fury of the tempest. In that moment, Alex knew what he had to do. He couldn't just stand by and watch. He had to help her, even if it meant putting himself in the eye of the storm. "Vara," he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You can do this. I believe in you, but you need to trust yourself. You've got this." For a moment, Vera's eyes flickered open, locking with his. The storm outside howled, but in that single moment of eye contact, there was clarity. She could feel it, the connection between them, the trust. Alex believed in her, and that belief gave her strength. She raised her arms higher, and for the first time, she felt the power inside her respond, not with the chaos of the storm, but with calm. She wasn't just controlling the storm, she was guiding it, directing it. The wind died down, and the lightning stopped flashing wildly. The sky began to clear, and the energy in the air seemed to shift from chaos to focus. Alex watched in awe as Vera's power became something more than just raw destruction. It became something beautiful, something controlled. The storm had not been a force of nature. It had been a test to see if Vara could control her destiny, and she had passed. The city outside was safe, for now. The storm that had threatened to destroy everything was now calming, its energy fading away. The winds died down, and the sky began to clear. It was as if the earth itself was breathing a sigh of relief. Vera collapsed to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. The storm had been defeated, and the city was saved. But it hadn't been just the storm that had been defeated. It was the doubt within her, the fear that had almost consumed her. She had conquered the power inside her, and in doing so, had saved them all. Alex rushed to her side, his heart pounding in his chest. "Vera, you did it. You saved us." Vera looked up at him, a weak but relieved smile crossing her face. "We did it, Alex. Together." As they sat there, the storm finally gone, the city safe, Alex realized that this was just the beginning. The battle was over, but their journey had only just begun. They had faced the storm together, and nothing would ever be the same again. The aftermath of the storm left everything eerily quiet. The once threatening clouds that had hung over the city like a dark veil were now dissipating, leaving only clear skies and a gentle breeze. The world felt different, as if the storm had not only washed away the physical damage, but had also cleansed the emotions that had weighed heavily on everyone. The silence that followed was peaceful, almost surreal. Yet, beneath this calm, there was an undeniable feeling that things had changed forever. Vera sat on the edge of the tower, her legs dangling over the side, looking out at the city. Her chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths, the adrenaline from the battle finally ebbing away. Her body was tired. The strain of controlling the storm had taken everything out of her, but her mind was clearer than it had ever been. She had done what she thought was impossible. She had harnessed the power inside her and used it to save the city. She had not only gained control of the storm, but she had gained control of herself. Alex stood beside her, watching her closely, as if making sure she was all right. His face was a mixture of pride and concern. "You did it," he said softly, his voice filled with admiration. "You saved everyone." Vera turned to him, offering a small smile. "We did it," she corrected, her voice tired but warm. She had come to realize in that moment that it wasn't just about her. It was about the people who had believed in her, who had helped her through the hardest moments. It was about Alex and the bond they had formed through everything they had faced together. "We couldn't have done it without you," she added, her eyes meeting his. "I couldn't have done it without you." Alex smiled back, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet understanding between them that didn't need words. They had both been changed by what they had been through. They had been through the fire together, and they had come out on the other side stronger. Looking out at the city, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The storm had threatened to destroy everything they had fought for, but now, the city was standing tall. It was a symbol of their resilience, of their victory over the chaos that had tried to tear them apart. They had faced the unknown, and together they had won. The city, the people, and the land were all safe once again. "Where do we go from here?" Alex asked, his voice breaking the quiet. Vera thought for a moment, then looked back at him, her eyes filled with a determination that Alex had seen before, but now it was different. It wasn't fear or uncertainty. It was certainty. She had found her place in this world, and she knew exactly what her next step would be. "I think it's time we rebuild," she said with quiet confidence. "We've got a chance to start over, to make things right." Alex nodded in agreement. "Yeah," he said, his voice filled with hope. "We have a chance to build something better, something stronger." The city was not the only thing that needed rebuilding. They had all been through a storm, both literal and emotional. The destruction they had witnessed was not just in the world around them, but inside themselves. But now, with the storm past and the future ahead, they had a chance to heal, to rebuild their relationships, their city, and their lives. Vera stood up, her legs shaky from exhaustion, but her resolve was unwavering. "We'll need help," she said, her voice firm. "This city can't be rebuilt by just the two of us. We'll need to unite the people. We'll need to show them that we're stronger together." Alex stood as well, stepping closer to her. "I'll help," he said, his voice steady. "I'll help you lead." They both knew that it wasn't going to be easy. The aftermath of the storm had left scars on the city and its people. There would be difficult decisions ahead, and many challenges to face. But for the first time in a long while, they felt ready for it. They weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to build something worth living for. The sun was beginning to set, casting an orange glow over the city. It was a beautiful sight, one that reminded them that even after the darkest storms, the sun would rise again. The future was uncertain, but they had survived the worst. They had seen what was possible when they worked together, and they were determined to make the most of the second chance they had been given. As the night began to fall, Alex and Vera stood side by side, looking out over the city they had saved. They had no idea what the future held, But one thing was certain. They were no longer alone. They had each other, and they had the strength to face whatever came next. The storm had changed them, but it had also brought them closer together. It had given them the opportunity to start anew, and they were ready to embrace it. In the distance, the first stars began to appear, twinkling in the dark sky like tiny beacons of hope. Alex looked up at them, feeling the weight of everything that had happened, but also a sense of peace. They had made it through. And now, the real work began. Together, they would rebuild. Together, they would face whatever came next. And together, they would make sure that the storm would never return.